Okay, so we're going to start with this guy, the beautiful male. And again, we spent a little bit of time already talking about the anatomy of the head. So hopefully you'll ready to start sketching. Tell me in the chat box who's ready to follow along. We're just working in my trusty mechanical graphite pencil. And then you can finish up yours in any medium you want, shaded pencil or colored pencil or watercolors with this beautiful iridescence. Great. Susan and Claire are ready. Okay, let's go. Let me see. Wait, sorry. Oh, there we go. So we're going to do the head. First, a big oval for the head, keeping it really light. And that forehead's really tall. I'm going to be fixing that a bit as we go. So, don't always do exactly what I'm doing, but see the fat cheek there. And I'm getting down to the neck before I add the bill. So we're starting really loose. Now we've got the bill, and it's very broad. And it's got these two kind of horn-like structures, those yellow horns that come up. And that mandible is really wide. You might want to make yours even wider than I did. And you can see a little lump there, and another bump, and another bump. And yeah, I would make my mandible a little bit bigger if I were you. It was quite wide. And then the lower bill, which is mostly overlapped and is smiling a little bit. And then the nail, which is that harder pointed part. Again, that dark melanin helps to give it strength because it's using the end of that bill a lot to get in the water and in the mud and hunt for all those insects and snails and worms and aquatic plants. We have a little lump right there, which is the nostril, the right nostril. You can see just a little bit of it. And you can also see a little lump there on either side of the dark nail of the bill. So yeah, I would make my mandible wider. I might have made it wider later. I can't remember. But anyway, those two horns. So that shape is really important there. It can really differ between the groups. And the upper bill overlaps the lower, and it's a little bit of a smile there. Now the forehead, and I'm noticing I want to make it even higher. So that's why we stay really light in the beginning. And that's why we like to leave the incorrect marks for a while to help us notice. And I think I even get the forehead higher later on. So if we stay light and just pencil everything in, doing some comparisons of relative proportions. So yeah, you see if it's better to not erase anything for a while so you can really feel like you're knowing where you're modifying here. And you see, I just noticed even more. I want to get that taller. And then the big cheek. So giving some relative proportions, the length of the bill compared to the width of the head. And then the right side of the bird's neck. And we're just going to do this upper part here, not the rest of the body. And the male's white band around the neck. Try and make that thicker later on. Okay, now we're going to figure out where the eye is. So thinking about how far back it is. And it's kind of on top of that fat chipmunk cheek. So I'm sort of just drawing a very light oval there where that fatter part is, so that if I want to give that some more three-dimensional shading later, I can. But we're going to put that eye on top of that fat cheek like we saw in the other photos, noticing how far back it is from the bill and how far down it is from the top of the head. And the eye shape can kind of vary depending on how sleepy or alert they are. So it doesn't have to be exact. Just like you in the morning, your eyes are kind of droopier than later in the afternoon after you've had a few cups of coffee, right? They've got that beautiful brown iris and the black pupil. And you want to take some time with this. And then there's that line around it of unfeathered skin that you have on most birds. Some birds are very brightly colored, like the black oyster catcher on the coast has a very bright yellow band around there. So that is an unfeathered part. And I'm so continue to look at it closely. I think I made mine a little bit too big, but just thinking about it. And so the more I watch something on a big screen like this, the more I can see the parts I got a little bit wrong. So I think I'm going to make it a teensy bit smaller, but you just spend the right amount of time, because the eye, of course, is the window to the soul, and you want that to be right. It's more important than where all the exact feathers are and such. Again, that eye ring that's unfeathered. And so, yeah, at this point, I'm noticing other things that you could do better than me, hopefully. So, yeah, you see these sort of two horns that are coming off the top of the bill. See, mine are a little bit too flattened. And I'd also, if I were you, make my bill a little bit wider than I did. I think mine could be a few millimeters wider. But it's easy how I have a really big monitor I'm looking at right now, so I can really see the issues more. But anyway, hopefully you learn from my mistakes. Now we got to get that nostril in there. And see, there's the right nostril, mostly hidden. And now we've got the bird's left nostril. So there's this sort of ridge around it, or more like a valley sort of, with the nostril inside. And then a ridge below it that you can see is shadowed. Now, I think mine's a little big and my bill's a little narrow, so I'm going to fix it. I'm fixing a little bit. So you just keep your eye more on the photograph on the left. But I like to have you draw while I'm drawing, just to kind of see about how fast you might be able to draw. I don't want to hurry people. So yeah, I see a couple issues there, but that's okay. Again, the more you draw something and make mistakes, the more you notice that particular anatomy that you'll really understand and appreciate more when you're out in the field. Yeah, I'm going to make my bill a little wider there at the end. So finishing up the outline of the bill. Now firming up the forehead and the nape there, where the fat chipmunk cheek is. And getting that neck ring a little bit wider. My eye is bugging me a little bit there, but oh well. Okay, and then that round cheek that you can shadow later. You see how much shadowing is under here. It's the same green color under here, but it's in shadow. So just looking at all those parts again before you move on. Thinking about if you got the shape close. Okay, we're going to move on now. So this is our next one. So another position that you'll often see the ducks in. And again, if you've drawn them and studied them well from a photograph first, you'll be a lot more confident about drawing them more quickly in the field, even if you can't see all these parts. So we are going to go into quite a bit of detail of all the wing parts, which again, you can't really always see in the field, but it's just fun to know. Okay. So we're kind of seeing, basically, we've got this torpedo shape of the body we're going to draw first, and then the wings. And we see the bird's left wing here. And then we see one little primary feather of the right wing, which I think I forgot to add on my drawing. I did forget to add. That's okay. Yeah. So anyway, we see, reviewing these parts again, we've got the golden bill, the green head with the eye. We've got the neck ring. Then we've got this torpedo shaped body. And then the back of the body has those two cute little central tail feathers that are black, surrounded by something like 12 white feathers and a bright orange foot. Then we have the rest here, and we'll talk about that as we draw it. So we'll kind of break it down first into drawing a big triangle for the wing, and then drawing the parts. So just to go over this first before we start, we've got sort of the mantle feathers on the top. Then we've got a bunch of scapular feathers on sort of the forearm. And then we have a bunch of covert, which are the feathers groups that are covering, as in covert, they're covering the secondary set, which is the colored speculum, and the tertials, which again are that 4 feathers that are much larger than in other birds. Usually the tertials kind of get smaller and smaller and smaller as you go with songbirds, but in the ducks, they're really big. I don't know why. And then the front of the feather, you've got the thumb, or it's called the alula, that's flipping up a bit, and that helps them to land. They can bring that up, just like when you're on a plane and they're bringing up the part of the wing. So same idea, that thumb feather group. And then you have some more coverts, some primary coverts that are covering the primaries. Okay, so I know that sounds really scientific, but don't worry, we're going to draw it together. So first, starting with the kind of the general width of the whole bird. And you see the rump area is lower than the head. We'll get a little triangle for the head. Again, just everything really sketchy and loose. Oval for the head, neck. Then this torpedo shape of the body, for pretending the wing isn't there yet. Going down to the end of the tail. Then showing where the shoulder starts and the big triangle of the wing coming forward. And you see the primary feather comes down to a plumb line, almost to like the eye. So a big light triangle, kind of the fat belly and the yellow legs. I'm kind of just looking at my proportions, basically. So just double checking your basic proportions before you start to add any details. So now we're going to go back to the head area. Not going to spend too much time on that because we really want to focus on the parts of the wing. So just got a triangle for the bill. So not as much detail as we just did. And then the head, which is just a little bit fatter than the neck. It arches, gets thinner in the neck. And then the cheek, the nice fat cheek. And then it gets thinner at the neck. And coming down to the chest where it visually touches the forearm. And placing the eye, which you really wouldn't generally see in the flying bird because it's camouflaged against the green. Now looking at the, just double checking my proportions. Sorry, I'm reaching over to my photograph to double check the proportions. Now the arched back, and noticing that the rump is going to be lower than the bill and the head area. And there's a little bit of a angle there, which I made a little bit too steep just now, but I'll fix it later. So we're ending at the end of the rump and then starting with the tail, the 2 black curled central tail feathers. And then the white feathers of the tail continue on either side. So we see the group of white tail feathers that are on the right side of the bird behind the pair of black. And then the rest of the tail feathers coming up. So those other tail feathers that are on the left side of the bird. Now we're going to get the orange legs. We just see the left leg basically, and we see the bend in the ankle there. And then the 3 webbed toes, which you just really don't see much, but I'm just going to give a little shadowing to indicate that we've got 3 toes. And the belly or vent area. Now we're going to start with that wing. So kind of double checking how wide that wing is. And we're going to go back to the shoulder area. I'm going to finish up the neck ring there, the diagnostic neck ring, and then looking at the shoulder and it's arching over. Basically the elbow, might call it the elbow, and then going down to the wrist where the alula feather is right there. There's actually, and then a little bit more, yeah, and then the flight feather. So noticing where that flight feather is. Let me stop here. So in terms of my 6 steps to sketching success, we talk about angles and alignments, right? And so and negative shapes and spaces. So just thinking about that before we go any farther, like we have this negative shape or angle here. And we've got this alignment here. So noticing where the front of the first primary feather is, taking a plumb line down from the bill, it looks like it's just a little bit back from the bill. Now, this doesn't have to be exact because, of course, the bird is flying and they're going to be moving their wings. I think in the photograph, maybe the front here only comes as far as the eye, but there's so many variables. It doesn't have to be exact. But anyway, just kind of thinking about those 6 steps to sketching success that we mentioned yesterday, and I'm sure you've heard in my other workshops, of angles and alignments and proportions and negative shapes. Okay, so let's keep going. So now it gets a little bit more complicated. So we're going to try to look at the rest of the, and get rid of the belly there because the wing's on top of it. Clean things up a little bit. So the scapular feathers are up on top there. We're just going to pencil those in very lightly to help us remember where they are. And then there's a whole kind of bunch of them on the shoulder. And usually I like to draw from, when I'm drawing the feathers, kind of starting from the back of the bird and then coming down. But I'm just trying to separate out these major groups of feathers. There's the coverts I'm separating out from the scapulars. And again, you do not have to worry about doing this in the field. This kind of drawing is just a study for you to help you see the parts of the wing. Then the primary coverts group. And then the primaries, which I think there's 11 of those. But we'll get the details of those later. But I'm making a line that's separating the group of primary flight feathers from the secondary feathers that have that bright blue. So I like to first just kind of know the groups, and now the tertials, which again are 4 of them that are super long compared to in songbirds. They are shorter than the secondaries. Oh, there was a question about making the duck image larger. I can go back to it at the end if that's okay. Because this guy is longer than wide, usually I do have the image larger on the right, I mean on the left, but then he'd be so small when I'm drawing him. So I'm writing down these words, and again, you don't have to worry about this, and you can learn a lot more about this in my Sketching Backyard Birds for Beginners course, or the free series I gave you on bluebirds. So there's those tertials, and noticing how they overlap. The overlapping on a bird's wing starts at the top, kind of like imagining the roof of a house. So now we're going to draw the secondaries with the bright blue area called the speculum. So thinking about how like the tiles on a roof overlap starting at the top. So that's why I usually start drawing the feathers starting at the top so that I can overlap them. Now there's some white feathers there that are some coverts that are above the group of secondaries. Now I'm drawing the secondaries that will have the blue edged in white. And I'm not counting these. I think I forget how many of them. You can look later, but we're just trying to practice getting to know the major groups of feathers. And since we're not trying to make a scientific illustration or even a field guide illustration, and I have no idea what experience level you guys are. I know some of you have completed my other bird sketching courses, and some of you might be new. So now I want to separate out those white covert feathers. And there's several groups, primary, median, and secondary coverts. So anyway, that white group we just did. Now I think I'll add just a few more half moon shapes for the rest of those scapulars, so I can move on down to the next set. Now those Alula feathers is really obvious right there, that little angle. And lastly, we'll do the primaries, but we've got to get a few more of these primary coverts, which is just smaller feathers that cover the primaries, just like there were secondary coverts that covered the secondaries. So I know you're probably getting a little bit scared by now, but don't worry, just follow along. Again, you don't have to worry about any of this in the field, but I just thought I would take the time. And primaries are a little bit different shaped than secondaries. And they get more pointed here, as you see, towards the end. That helps them be more aerodynamic. I think I'm counting the primaries and noticing I need another one. I think I'm going to add another one. Yeah, there we go. I think I wanted to add another one. So here also you can look at the negative shapes between those feathers. You see those last few are curled up way far there. So don't worry, we'll go back to the larger photo in a minute. So the mantle feathers, the scapular feathers, just talking about each of these groups again. More scapulars. The alula, which is the thumb. Groups of coverts. Primary coverts, that's that little 1 number. Secondaries with their secondary coverts, which are white. And those long, long tertials, which are unique for the ducks. Now I'm just firming up the whole thing. And if I was going to finish this drawing, if I hadn't written all that text on it, if I was going to finish this in colored pencil or watercolor, I wouldn't be adding all this extra graphite. Fixing that rump, it's a little bit too skinny there. So yeah, if you're going to move on to watercolors or colored pencils, you wouldn't add more graphite. So those cute central tail feathers are black, just 2 of them. And a lot of birds, either the outermost or the innermost pair might be different. Like if you've taken any of my hummingbird classes, sometimes they can be much longer and really showier. And then the other feathers. So just firming all this stuff up. Giving him a little bit fatter belly there. So it's never too late to modify things. So, you know, this step of darkening up everything is another chance for you to keep looking at your reference photo and not being afraid to modify. And my hand was just accentuating that I start with the feathers at the top of the back and work down towards the very tip of the primaries, since that's how they overlap. So the very top feathers are the scapulars, and then these coverts, each overlapping like the roof shingles on a roof. And then the primary coverts, which are overlapping and protecting the primaries. So again, I'm not counting these. You could do that later if you want to be more specific. Then these tertials. Then the secondary set of feathers, which are colored in the center with blue and they're edged in white. And yeah, they're kind of more boxy and rectangular shaped than the flight feathers. And this depends on the type of bird as well. So I'm giving these primary feathers a little bit more of a point, and the leading edge is a little bit longer. So I'm fixing that a little bit as I continue to observe my bird. And noticing the negative shapes between those feathers that are separated from each other as the bird is flapping its wings. Okay, let me go back to the, where did we have it here? Sorry, I'm trying to get to the back to that. I can't stop it. Wait a minute, I know what to do. Okay, so I'm trying to find that one again. How are we all doing? Tell me in the chat box. There, we finally have it. All righty. So yeah, anyway, now that you've drawn all these things, you see it so much better, right? But in the field, if you have the time to add a little bit of this, that's good. Otherwise, you can just kind of separate out the major groups, like an oval for the tertials, a rectangle for the secondaries, kind of a maybe triangle for the primaries, and a few little half circles on the top here for the scapulars and coverts. But anyway, like we said before, it's good to know more than you show. And you also see how the lighting, if you're going to add a shadowing later, when you look at this image in your downloads, you'll see, how much shadowing there is on underneath the belly here and on the different parts of the iridescent head. Okay, tell me in the chat box how you guys are doing, or if you've just pulled out your hair and ran off and got some coffee. Did I intimidate you too much with all of that? I'm not sure how many of you here have gone through my more detailed courses where we've really looked at the parts of the wing. But our last drawing is going to be a little easier. But we will still see a little bit of separation of these feather parts. So tell me in the chat box, nobody's talking, so. Chris asked if I could make the duck image larger, so I am trying that here. Good, so Chris says you're doing fine, thanks. Marianne says you'll try in the replay. Right, good. So, it's great to draw things a lot more times than just once, right? So the more you practice and, look at the other photos that I've given you, like in our first 2-page handout, we had this photo here of the widgeon flying. So if you study that, you'll now be able to see more of those wing parts we talked about. As well as, the merganser, you'll see more of the wing parts here that we talked about. So all of these guys will get much more obvious. And even the wood duck, which looks really complicated and intimidating, it's easier for you to see some of these parts, like this triangle sticking out is the primary flight feathers, right? Okay, who's ready to do the last one? We are on exact perfect time. I cannot believe it. How are we doing here? Okay, so now we're going to do this one. And so this will be a lot easier because you can see the silhouette really well. And the reason I want you to do this one is just so you understand anatomically what's under the water. So we've got the water line here. But also it's going to just make it easier now that you can see some of these sets of feathers and it's not as confusing as before. So you kind of see this set of the scapulars, and then this long triangle are those tertials, those 4 tertial feathers. And the tertials, as well as these flank feathers, are covering the rest of the wing. They're covering that bright speculum and most of the flight feathers. You can see a few of the flight feathers sticking out back here, I think, but they're mainly hidden. So, now that we really understand the anatomy of the wing, that you can understand it when they're sitting on the water or just sitting in the lawn, and you can understand more. And then you have the black tail feathers sticking up, right? So, and then we have the paddling legs here, and the legs on these dabbling ducks looks a little bit different than on diving ducks. Diving ducks have kind of bigger, especially webbed toes to be able to have them swim better, because they spend a lot more time diving for fishes and diving deeper under the water. Although mallards will swim underwater occasionally as well. Okay, and when we're doing the legs, we want to see sort of this bend here of the ankle, and the bend here of sort of the wrist area, and then the 3 webbed toes going forward and the 1 toe going back. Okay, so how's that? So this is just 8 minutes long, and then we'll have time for sharing, and we're going to finish on time. Okay, who's ready for this one then? You got a new piece of paper? Great. Ready says Susan. Darlene says all of the above. Great. Perfect. Let's go. Okay, I'm getting an oval for the head. Oh, sorry. I don't know what happened to the inset picture. Triangle for the bill. The lower bill with a little smile. Okay, forehead. Firming up the bill and the head because we're only going to do that really once. Not going to go into as much detail. Trying to just get the silhouette more. The eye that's high on the head. See, it's higher than the top of the bill, actually, if you draw a horizontal line. Okay, now our neck. And since birds can, stretch their neck up or down a lot, yours could be a little longer or shorter. Mine's too skinny first, but I'm going to fix that. So as I continue to observe my photograph, I decide that I want a more beefy neck. Sorry, I'm not sure what happened to that inset. The cheek and the neck coming down to the chest at the waterline. Yeah, I'm going to draw a waterline. It's just kind of wavy there. Now an arc from the shoulder up to the rump. And the bird's right wing. And tertial triangle, and then those 2 cute central tail feathers and the white feathers. And I decided I'm going to lower my water line a little bit. So I think those are the tertials, actually. So kind of separating out the scapulars. And we can go back to this photo again afterwards and make it larger. Okay, Chris, great. Thank you so much. Now we're getting the big fat belly. I'm almost running out of paper, but I think I'm going to make it. So noticing where the belly is fattest. And I think I'm going to make him a little bit fatter later on here. There's an angle right there, noticing where the belly meets the undertail coverts. Right there. Now noticing, taking a plumb line down on the back, noticing where the bird's left leg is and the feathered part. Now I'm going to fix this in a moment because I noticed if I was looking at that negative shape right there, it's not quite right. So I'm fixing it a little bit. So it really helps to look at negative shapes. But again, the bird is swimming. I'm giving him a little bit fatter belly. I want him to be nice and full with a nice meal. So in parts that move, like the wing we were just showing earlier, we don't have to be a slave to the photograph. Obviously, the legs are pumping back and forth as it swims, so it doesn't have to be exactly like this. So we've got the 3 toes and then the back toe. And I'm like, I should have. So the 3 toes facing forward are kind of squeezed together. And you can a little bit see the middle toe is longest with the webbing. And then the 3rd toe. I'm getting the nails. That angle of the toe there. Continuing to just look back and forth, get my angles right. Now the other leg, so again, noticing kind of where it's coming and the negative shape between the left and right leg. And this leg doesn't overlap like the left leg does, the belly, because it's in back. And it's pushing down, so it's longer and more vertical. Oh, sorry, I didn't move that. So just finishing up, firming up those lines. And decided to make the neck thicker there. You really want to get your silhouette firmed up before you go on to adding any more color details. That's the triangle for those long tertials that are characteristic of the duck family. And the ones on the right wing.